Hello, hopefully a quick video to discuss these knives today. So these are the Lionsteel ck02 Bolus knives. They go by many names. I've had these for about 2 weeks. I'm going to carry them for a couple more weeks and then do a second follow-up video talking about any wear, tear, degradation, things like that. So what are these? These are known as the Lionsteel ck02 or collectorknives.net ck02. The model is Bolus and they're made by Lionsteel in Italy. I have two of these knives. They're both the Otnat spear jack configuration. That's just my preference. It comes in 3 blades though. It comes in the clip jack, drop point jack, and Otnat spear jack. So again, it's going to be clip point, drop point, spear point. In terms of handle materials, there are many. This guy is going to be the ram's horn, and being a natural material, you get very different grains for different woods, things like that. So it is a bit of a crapshoot for if you get something that's absolutely gorgeous or kind of meh. So just keep that in mind if you're ordering something with the natural materials. So this is ram's horn. This is red linen micarta. It also comes in carbon fiber, ebony wood, natural micarta, stag, green G10, and snakewood. So that also means that there's quite a bit of price in this. They're all within $20 of each other, but the cheaper ones are going to be the synthetics. So this was about $120 at the low end, and then at the high end it's about $140 US. So there's quite a bit of variance, but they are within within $20 of each other. Now, last question is, where do you get these? So these are available through collectorknives.net. It used to be an exclusive to them. You can now get them through the Lionsteel web store as of 2019. They currently only have the Otnat spear jack, but they also have the ck01 in many configurations is now available there as well. So let's get into some of the specifications, then we'll do comparisons, and I'll tell you what I do and do not like about the knife so far after a couple weeks. Again, the second video, I'm going to take off the show scale and go into the guts, all that kind of stuff. So this is a M390 blade steel. It is hardened to 60 to 61 HRC from Lionsteel's published informations, and it's running on titanium liners and phosphate bronze washers. So that's all fantastic. It's nice materials upgrades from your standard like Great Eastern Cutlery, the 1095 everywhere. So it's a nice upgrade in terms of modernization for that. The closed length is going to be 3 13/16 inches, which is about 81 millimeters. The overall length when open is going to be 6 5/8 inches or 168 millimeters. And one of the best parts about this knife is that the blade is 2 7/8 inches. I believe that's about the blade length for both the clip point, drop point, and the spear point. So that comes in at 73 millimeters, which is going to be under the 3-inch mark, which is the magical number that gets you international happiness through all the carry laws. So that's fantastic. The sharpened part of this blade, it's because of the sharpening tool, it's missing a little bit. It's only about 70 millimeters of cutting edge, or about 2 3/4 inches. Weight varies quite a bit depending on the configuration you choose. So the blades all weight differently, and the handle materials all weigh differently. This configuration is about 2.4 to 2.45 ounces, so about 70-ish grams. And there is a half stop on this, but one of the things I love about this knife is that it has a screw pivot instead of a pin. So what that means is you can take off the show scale and you can set this where you want it. So there's the half stop. But I like my pivots a little bit tighter, so I can actually set it where I want. Despite it having a heavy pivot, they did move the grip down away from the fulcrum or the pivot, so you can, even though I have a tighter knife on this guy, it is very easy to open and close to the point where in a pinch, like I could open this up. It's a bit tricky, but you can open it with one hand if I absolutely needed to and close it with one hand safely. So I like that you're able to dial in the pivot. So all of those modern conveniences, they're amazing. Let's go into some size comparisons next. So this is the ck02. Here is a ck01. This is the Dom with ebony wood, and then we're going to have a Victorinox Soldier. So the Soldier, same as the Pioneer, things like that. It's the same overall length as the same closed length as a ck01, and the ck01 is the same length as a ck02, within a couple, like a mil or so. The difference is that this has a lot more in terms of ergonomics for the handle going on. It's not like ergonomics, so there's a couple other design features I want to go into. This is a love it or hate it kind of affair, whereas these are very neutral sticks. They all just kind of work. Opened up. And then this guy. Okay, let's try and get these all pivot to pivot, more or less. So that's what they look like side by side. So again, if you're used to a Pioneer, Soldier, that kind of Victorinox, you're getting the same kind of thing out of these guys. A couple more. They're not as pertinent, but I'll have them anyway. It's going to be the Spyderco Delica. So you can see the Delica is quite a bit bigger, and when it's opened up, you can see the Delica just dwarfs this guy. Then there's going to be the other one is going to be a Great Eastern Cutlery. I'll bring this in at a couple of points to showcase kind of a traditional slip joint manufacturing versus what Lionsteel is going for in this in the OtNat. So that is your GEC versus a Lionsteel ck02, and this is the pattern 93. Okay, so that's a bunch of stuff flying all over the screen. So let's get into what I do like about this knife after having it for about 2 weeks, carrying it, using it, things like that. So tail to tip, this guy has a tail. Very unusual for a slip joint. So this is threaded through, so I have taken this guy apart. It's kind of a pin that's pressed through there and you can't take it out. So it's not like Chris Reeve style where you can take this off, then loop a new lanyard on and put it on. You actually have to untie this and thread something through, retie a lanyard. For slip joints, I do appreciate having a lanyard. It makes a lot of sense. It makes the usability for getting it in and out of the pocket quite a bit nicer. For things that have a pocket clip, I don't really see the point for having a lanyard, but this is a very nice upgrade to your traditional slip point, so it's a very nice modernization. Other modernizations are, instead of having everything pinned together, they have everything's screwed on with fasteners, and that's fantastic. You can actually take the show side, both scales off, and get at the pivot and do some tuning. Over time, slip joints will loosen a little bit, and you can either, if you're lucky, you can use the rubber mount and kind of tap it back to a nice point. But what I like is that I was able to get this a little bit tighter how I like my blades. So being able to get in there and do that is fantastic. So the scales being able to come off, that's great. Mentioned earlier was the titanium liner. So this is titanium liners on phosphate bronze washers with an M390 blade. So it's not completely corrosion proof, but it is significantly more corrosion resistant than your traditional knives. So these are like kind of lovingly handcrafted, created. This is more mass manufacturing modernization, and it does do quite a bit nicer in terms of use. So I don't really worry about washing my knife and drying it off, like meticulously drying and oiling, and I just use it and go. So it's fantastic. I love that about this knife. Opening the knife up, oh, actually there's a couple more things in the closed configuration. Comparing this guy with other slip joints in a closed configuration, you usually have the kick, so a little bit of the blade tang sticking up and out. A lot of people don't like that, but in the Bolus, the ck02, the guy from Collector Knives, he posted a bunch of early prototypes where he was discussing the design with Lionsteel and the thought process. So this was very much designed for slip joint fanatics, and the kick is actually recessed, hidden into the handle. So this is the little swell up in the bolster area, or the front of the handle, is done deliberately to hide the kick, and I think that's fantastic. You have a, in terms of like gun people, it's like a dehorned design. It's a no snag design. It's very streamlined. So I absolutely love that in this. The other thing is that the swell in the bottom of the heel, it is done in such a way that you have tons of sharpening left on that blade. The tip is well recessed in there. You have no risk of that snagging or cutting a thread or getting your pocket, getting your skin. There is absolutely no risk of this knife hurting you in the close configuration at all. So that's a great thing for a slip joint knife. Opening this up, what else is going on? You can see inside there is going to be an internal stop pin. That's a great consideration that a lot of modern slip joint companies like Manley's doing it, Lionsteel has a few others do it. And what that does is it lets you get the blade a little bit down closer to the spring bar without any danger of the blade contacting the spring bar. If you don't have that pin, so I'll use my GEC unfortunately, but if you press very gently on the GEC, you can get that blade to go a little bit deeper. On a traditional pocket knife, it usually relies completely on the internal geometry here, so that when you're opening and closing the knife, you don't have over travel. With these knives, you can be a little bit more foolish and just kind of slam it shut, and you never have a problem with the blade smacking into the spring bar. I think that's great. So those are all the really nice modernizations and upgrades, things that I like about the knife. The blades themselves, we'll get into that a little bit later. Sticking with the handle is a very much a love it and leave it. Everyone that handles the ck01, I find loves the ck01 because the handle is just a stick. Like, you can't really mess up the ergonomics of a straight stick. This guy, for me, it works very well. I find I get 2 fingers high, 2 fingers low, no problem. Some of my friends with smaller, larger hands, they either get like their 3rd finger on that swell or their 2nd finger on that little swell there. And they can kind of figure, like, after holding the knife, like just repositioning, they find a comfortable position, but their intuitive first reach and grab, they found that they didn't like this knife, but over time they could kind of find a spot that worked for them. So it is something to keep in mind that this may or may not work for you for the ergonomics of the handle. Speaking of the handle, the synthetic materials and woods are going to be a contoured material. As you can see how they milled it, and you can see the different layers of the micarta in there, and it is quite a bit thinner overall. Compared to the ram, whoopsie daisy, the stag and the ram are going to be quite a bit thicker because they'll chip, they'll break, they'll crack. So they have to have a little bit thicker handle material so that it will not do that over time. So this is a little bit more of a robust handle on this guy, and it does work. It does change the ergonomics as well. I do find that this is a lot slimmer in hand and in pocket. This is a little bit beefier. So if you have a bigger hand, this guy will fit nicely. If you have a smaller hand, this might not feel as nice as this knife, as the synthetics with the woods, the carbon fibers, and the micartas. So that's the handle. Next, going up to the blade. So the blade, not all knives are created equally. My ram was absolutely perfect from the factory. So centering is perfect, grind is perfect, action is perfect. It's a little bit tighter than this guy was, but the walk and talk, everything, it's a great knife out of the factory. This guy came with the blade almost touching the scale, and then the grind is quite a bit off. So you always get the illusion, even though it is pretty much center, not exactly, but pretty much center, it does look off because the tip is very poorly ground. On the back side here from the factory, the grind is very poor. It's very shallow grind, and on this side, it's quite a tall grind. So I think that, like, inclusive, these knives are probably the same sharpening inclusively, but it's just off on this guy. So I found that this knife is fantastic for everything. I can cut anything with this guy, and it's great. It works. This guy, I do get a little bit more drag cutting through cardboard, so it does all the EDC tasks, and it comes down to the angle being a little bit messed up. This guy works well on food products, paper, stuff like that. Cardboard is okay, but cutting anything harder like woods, rubbers, plant pots, zip ties, this guy really struggles on anything synthetic for cutting. It just doesn't work, and for woods. So that's what I noticed on this knife. This knife was just ground better, and it works better. So there is a little bit of difference. They're not all made equally. You might get a good one or a bad one. That's highly unfortunate, but it is my observation. Like, I was fortunate enough to get 2, and that's what I did notice. I did notice that there was a difference. And when I say I was fortunate enough to get 2, I bought both of these. These are my knives. I'm not sponsored in any way. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to stop the video shortly unless I have a trailing thought. I do absolutely love this knife. It's great in the pocket, very light to carry, easy to open. I can open it with one hand in a pinch. It's just a nice knife. And the blade length is right at the right spot, under 3 inches. So I think that they really thought about what a slip joint user wants when the gentleman from Collector Knives was helping design this guy, and they just nailed everything. So I do love the design for this guy. There is one thing, I was holding this guy. I do feel that in my opinion, subjective opinion, I do feel that the ck01 is slightly nicer fit and finish build quality. I've had 3 ck01s, and they are all just fantastic. Things I like about the ck01 over the ck02 that are completely subjective and they don't really matter anyway at all is that they do have the tang. This guy has the hidden tang. That's whatever. But it's also the fastener choices. So all of the bolsters and the materials are going to be countersunk, and they use a countersunk screw head on there. Whereas these guys use button or domed screws, and you do feel that. So when you're just having it rubbing in your hand, you feel all the fasteners. I really wish that they would have done the extra little effort and done this kind of fastener job. That's the main thing between the ck01 and ck02 for quality. Oh, the spines. The spine, this is a higher crown, nicer finish, polish, and fit on the scales to the crown of the spring bar than I found on the ck02. It's like a very minor subjective thing, but I do feel that I do like the bolster work, the handle, the finish work on these guys, the spring bar. I just feel that I like the handles, the quality of the ck01's a little bit better than the ck02's, but that's not to say that this is not a good knife. I do like the ck02 quite a bit. And oh right, there was one other thing I can show off. My micarta handle, it's not exactly flush. They do have a little bit of chatter from when they were making the handle, so I'm going to try and clean that up, and in the second video hopefully that'll show up that it's nice and flush with no gaps. So just the worry is that like any sort of liquid or water will get in there and I can't clean it because it's not flush. That's the one consideration there that I fit and finish. So this guy again, fit and finish 120 versus like the 140 knife. This guy is absolutely perfect. There is no chips, marring, gapping. There's absolutely nothing wrong with this knife. I also noticed that this one came with a different grease than this guy. This one just had oil. This guy had a grease inside the pivot. So they are made differently, and I did notice a difference. So that's it for part one. I'll try and come back with a part two in about 2 weeks and a bit and let you know if I notice anything else. So this will be my dedicated carry for 2 weeks, doing all my tasks with this knife, and I'll continue to let you know if anything happens with this. I have used it for 2 weeks, and I find that I cannot sharpen M390 at all. And this guy, like, while it can do EDC tasks like fruit, veg, paper, cardboard, that kind of stuff, no problem, I just can't get a good enough edge on this guy with my skill level to make it bite into wood and other things. And again, I already said that, but this guy out of the box just runs circles around on the blade performance out of this guy, and it's the same blade. I don't know why. Anyway, that's it for me. Thanks, and have a good day.